are signaling molecule made by oxidation of a 20 carbon essential fatty acid. When I said essential fatty acid, that's fatty acid essential for not supplied by our body, but supplied by our diet, or in some the specific circumstances can be bring about from the cell membrane lipid اللي هو الارachidonic acid. These eicosanoids exert a complex control over many body systems, mainly the inflammation, immunity, and as a messengers in the central nervous systems. Of course, these eicosanoids derive from the omega-3 or omega-6 essential fatty acid. You have to know which fatty acid, essential fatty acid is omega-3 and which essential fatty acid derived from omega-6. Generally, the omega-6 eicosanoids regarding as a pro-inflammatory essential fatty acid, whereas omega-3 fatty acids are much less so. So the amount and the balance of these fat in a person diet will affect the body eicosanoid control functions. Of course, they affect or trigger the cardiovascular disease, triglyceride and blood pressure, and arthritis. Of course, as you know, every one of you know what I mean by non-steroidal and anti-inflammatory drugs. All of you hear about the Profen, Voltaren, Onestan, Indomethacin, and etc. All of these drugs located in the what is called non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs that act by down-regulating the eicosanoid biosynthesis because the eicosanoids are included in inflammation and immunity and the central nervous system nerve pulse transmission. As we said, they act as a messenger. This figure shows the diagram by which the precursor of eicosanoids. Of course, the eicosanoid is divided or classified into two classes. One of them called leukotrienes and the second one called prostaglandins. And each one has its own precursor, as you see in this page, in this figure. First of all, by the phospholipase C, of course, and phospholipase A2, this responsible for the catabolism and hydrolysis of the diacylglycerol, phospholipase C, and phospholipid hydrolysis by phospholipase A. Both of them will move or bring out the arachidonic acid from the cell membranes. So the arachidonic acid is the cornerstone for the biosynthesis of both these classes, I mean the leukotrienes and prostaglandins. Arachidonic acid by lipooxygenase enzymes, this will convert the arachidonic acid to hydroperoxytetranoic acid, which is the precursor of leukotrienes A4, leukotrienes C4, leukotriene D4, and leukotriene E4. This figure also for observation only. But you have to know the enzyme included and the precursor of each one, whether I mean not the arachidonic acid, the precursor of the all leukotrienes and prostaglandin is arachidonic acid, but the precursor of leukotrienes is HBET, which is the hydroperoxytetraenoic acid. This is for leukotriene, while the precursor for the prostaglandins, prostaglandin H2, precursor of the all other types of prostaglandin, اللي هم included the thromboxanes by thromboxane synthase enzyme, then thromboxane A2, and prostacyclin اللي هو prostaglandin I2 by prostacyclin synthase, and prostaglandin E synthase, which gives us to prostaglandin E2, which is the precursor of the prostaglandin F2, and etc. So you have to know the enzymes responsible for the hydrolysis of the diacylglycerol and phospholipid اللي هم phospholipase C and phospholipase A2, and enzyme responsible for the biosynthesis of both leukotrienes and prostaglandin. Leukotrienes, the enzyme responsible for the first one هو lipooxygenase, while cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2 responsible for the biosynthesis of prostaglandin. So there are 4 families of eicosanoids, as you see: prostaglandins, with prostocyclins, thromboxanes, and leukotrienes. The first 3 of these 4 is regarded with prostaglandins, all of them, while the fourth one, leukotrienes, the second class of eicosanoids. So for each, there are 2 or 3 separate series derived either from omega-3 or omega-6 essential fatty acids. Regarding nomenclature of the eicosanoids, as you know, eicosa means the 20 in Greek. So collectively, it is therefore oxygenated derivatives of 3 different 20 carbon atoms essential fatty acid. What are the name of these 3 different 20 carbon essential fatty acid? The first one, as you see, eicosapentaenoic acid, اللي هو omega 3 fatty acid with 5 double bond, and the second one, the arachidonic acid, which is an omega 6 fatty acid with 4 double bonds, and the last one, third one, dihomogamma linolenic acid, which is omega 6 with 3 double bonds. I want from you by which mechanism we name this, regarding nomenclature, name this 3 fatty acids. First of all, you have to know it's the 2-letter abbreviation above. For example, prostaglandin BG, which class A, B, C in sequence letters, and the 4 or 2, this is the meaning or indicating the number of the double bond. When I say leukotriene D4, that's mean there is 4 double bonds in this leukotriene. When I say prostaglandin I2, there is a 2 double bond in this prostaglandin. And this example, this is for you. For example, this EB A derived prostanoids, as prostaglandin, have 3 double bonds. Example, prostaglandin G3, and etc. This is for you to understand what's going on here. Regarding the biosynthesis of these 2 families of eicosanoids, there is also 2 families of enzyme catalyze the fatty acid oxygenation to produce these eicosanoids. Regarding prostanoids, I mean prostaglandins, the cyclooxygenase, we have 2 cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2 involved or incorporated in prostanoid or prostaglandin biosynthesis, while lipooxygenase, which is in several forms, there are 5 lipooxygenase, which is responsible for the biosynthesis of leukotrienes. You have to know eicosanoids in general are not stored within the cell. This is an important information, but are synthesized as they require. So they derive from the fatty acid that make up the cell membrane, as we said before a few minutes, and the nuclear membrane. And by this procedure, we can supply our body about what they need from the eicosanoid in form of prostaglandin or in form of leukotrienes, according to the condition and the situation in our body. To start with, I am going to talking about the eicosanoid biosynthesis, which is begin when the cell is activated. What are the triggers that make our cells synthesize eicosanoid in general, whether leukotriene or prostaglandin? In general, we have mechanical trauma, cytokines, and growth factor, and other stimuli. But these 3 triggering factor, you have to know these important things. This triggers the release of phospholipase. The mechanical trauma, cytokinase, and growth factors will trigger the release of phospholipase A2 and phospholipase 2, which is travel the nuclear and cell membrane and catalyze the hydrolysis of phospholipid and free the arachidonic acid اللي هو 20 carbon atoms, which is the precursor of the eicosanoid in general. This the medical importance هاي راح نخليها آخر شيء حقيقة، هاي جاية بالنص طافرة أنا. Regarding the prostanoid pathways، هنا راح نحكي نفصلها على البروستانويد اللي هي prostaglandins pathway, and then I'm going to talk about the leukotrienes pathways or biosynthesis. As we said, regarding the prostaglandin synthesis, we have two enzymes, the cyclooxygenase, which catalyze the conversion of free essential fatty acids to prostanoids by two-step process. Really, actually, the first step, two molecules of oxygen are added as two peroxide linkage, and a 5-member carbon ring is formed near the middle of the fatty acid chain. This will form a short-lived unstable intermediate prostaglandin G. بالبداية راح نسوي اللي هو short-lived unstable intermediate prostaglandin G. Next step اللي هو أو next one, the peroxide linkage sheds a single oxygen. بالبداية سوينا ضفنا 2 molecule of oxygen, بعدين remove a single oxygen, so will form prostaglandin H اللي هو all 3 classes of prostanoid originated from the prostaglandin H2. Okay, all have distinctive ring. حقيقة learning والستركتشر أنا ما مطلوب من عندكم، لازم تاخذون في general idea about the general structure or formula of the prostanoid and leukotrienes. Of course, every single prostaglandin is different from the other by the number of the double bond and its structures. So what is the role of prostaglandin or prostanoids in the inflammations? As you know, since antiquity, منذ الحقيقة البداية، منذ البدء، the cardinal signs of inflammation، كلكم لازم تعرفون شنو cardinal signs, basic signs of inflammation have been known as هاي منذ القدم since antiquity. شنو signs of inflammation؟ من واحد قال له عنده inflammation، واحد انضرب بوكس بوجهه، فد box in his eyes or in his face، or واحد صار عنده car accidents or during football game انكسر. شو يصير at the site of the fracture, at the site of box, at the site of fall down? First one, the color, red color سموه color worm. أولا شو يصير بالcolor؟ يصير redness يسمونه rubber. The second حقيقة تنفخ يصير إدمة، هاي من القدم يسموه tumor، يصير swelling، هذا second sign. third one يصير شنو يصير؟ فد temperature مالت site of inflammation increased، يصير warmth يسموه colors. and the last one اللي هو pain، pain يصير severe pain. These 4 cardinal essential sign of inflammation. Every one of you should know. When ask you about the cardinal sign of inflammation, you will say the redness, hotness, بعد swelling, pain. These 4 cardinal symptom or sign, of inflammations. Okay, we shift and jump to another things اللي هو action of prostanoids. High cardinal signs of inflammation. How is mediated? By which mechanism? So the prostanoid mediate the local symptoms of inflammation. شو تسوي لنا البروستانويد البروستاغلاندين؟ يا اما تسوي لنا vasoconstriction تعرفون، or vasodilatation، اما توسع او ضيق بالفيزلز. وسوينا coagulation trigger the platelet aggregation، وسوينا pain and fever. so احنا حقيقة بالميديكال براكتس من عرفنا انه the specific rate limiting enzyme responsible for the biosynthesis of prostanoids, so we have to deal with this rate limiting step. So the inhibition of this cyclooxygenase, specifically the inducible one اللي هو cyclooxygenase 2 isoform، اللي هو الهول مارك اوف نون ستيرويدال، يعني النون ستيرويدال انتي انفلاماتوري drugs work by which mechanism? Acting by inhibiting of cyclooxygenase 2. So will prevent or will reduce all the sign of inflammation, including pain, redness, swelling, and hotness. Which you have to know many drugs of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs acting by this procedure. The best known example هو الأسبرين اللي هو cyclooxygenase 2 is responsible for pain and inflammation, while you have to know the cyclooxygenase 2 is responsible for pain and inflammation, while cyclooxygenase 1 is responsible for the platelet aggregation or clotting actions. Okay, هاي خلصنا من البروستوغلاندين or prostanoid action or mechanism of action. Regarding the actions of leukotrienes play an important role in inflammation. So there is a neuroendocrine role for leukotriene C4. هنا ذكرت لك الليكوترين C4. ليش ذكرت لك إياه؟ Because it is so important, because has a similar structure of luteinizing hormone, which is one of hormone responsible for reproductive systems that trigger and induce the production, synthesis and secretion of the secondary sex hormone both in male and female. So the leukotriene C4 اللي هو neuroendocrine has in luteinizing hormone secretion. يعني when we need the secretion of luteinizing hormone, there should be the leukotriene C4 is available to mediate and facilitate the luteinizing hormone LH hormone secretion. On other hand, leukotriene B4 will causes adhesion and chemotaxis of leukocytes. Adhesion التصاق and chemotaxic جذب of leukocytes كرات الدم البيض and stimulate the aggregation and enzyme release of these white blood cells and generation of superoxide in neutrophils, one type of white blood cells called the neutrophil. Generation of superoxide, one of free radical called superoxides. So the blocking of leukotriene receptors can play a role in the management of inflammatory disease such as asthma. كلكم تعرفون الربو اللي هو asthma اللي هي دائما ننطيهم drugs at night اللي هو اسمه مونتلوكست. هسه حقيقة التريد مارك مالته اسمه ايركومب or اير وانس موجود بالسوق اللي هو مونتلوكست اللي هي 10 ملغ or زافرلوكست اللي هم best known drugs for long duration from 2 to 6 months given for the patient with asthmatic or with allergic problem in his bronchi. بس للأسمى ننطيهم هاي العلاجات اللي أكشن اللي هو inhibition of لا مو بس للأسمى، لا ننطيهم للسورايسيس بيشنت سورايتك بيشنت المرضى اللي عندهم صدفية داء الصدفية اللي هو مرض جلدي، وننطيهم للمرضى اللي عندهم روماتويد أرثرايتس اللي عندهم شنو روماتويد أرثرايتس يسموه التهاب المفاصل أو التهاب المفاصل الرثوي اللي هو ممكن يسوين disconfiguration of the bone and architecture of the شنو of the joints of bone whether in the hand or the شنو or legs or feet. يسوي تشوهات أصلا بالتركيبة التكوينية أو التركيبة الشكلية general contour of our body. راح أرجع للميديكال importance before I will jump to another subject called lipid peroxidation. نرجع علما للميديكال importance of eicosanoid in general. We have 6 medical importance. The first of all, the anti-inflammatory drug like corticosteroid مثل ما قلت لكم work by inhibiting the action of phospholipase 2. هنا قلت corticosteroid. Please focus with me. شوي انتبهوا وياي. Anti-inflammatory drugs include corticosteroid. من أقول corticosteroid I mean steroid hormone like dexamethasone, cortico or hydrocortisones. سامعين بالمثل بريزولون or prednisolone. All of these called steroid. This anti-inflammatory drug, the steroid, acting by inhibiting the action of phospholipase 2, while non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin has second one, indomethacin, ibuprofen, and phenylbutazone work by inhibition of cyclooxygenase actions. The first enzyme اللي هو regarding or responsible for the hydrolysis of arachidonic acid from the phospholipid inhibited by اللي هو phospholipase A2 inhibited by steroid اللي هو دكسون هلم جرى etc. Prednisolone and prednisolone. While non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs including aspirin, indomethacin, ibuprofen, even voltaren, phenylbutazone work by inhibiting the cyclooxygenase action which is catalyze the conversion of arachidonic acid to to الليكوترينز البروستاجلاندين E and prostaglandin H2 اللي هو precursor of all the type of the prostaglandin. Third important thing you have to know اللي هو angiotensin 2 bradykinin and epinephrine. كلهم دول شنو هم angiotensin 2 angiotensin specific molecule secreted by kidney, and bradykinin and epinephrine. All of these are acting as a neurotransmitter and neurochemical compound causes increase in intracellular calcium, which in turn will activate phospholipase A2. As a result, prostaglandin synthesis is increased. ليش بدنا نحكي بهذا الحكي؟ يعني أنا شرد أوصل لك بهاي النقطة طلاب. دا أقول لك يا أكو شغلات هواي يعني ننطيها الدرجات لايك ابنفرين. يعني واحد عنده مشكلة انطيناه قدرنا لي اللي هو ابنفرين. concomitant action of epinephrine increase the activity of phospholipase 2. So as a result, this will increase the prostaglandin synthesis. So you have to be careful and manage your patient with cautions. 4. Cyclooxygenase اللي هي responsible for prostaglandin or prostanoids exists in two isoforms, either cyclooxygenase 1 and cyclooxygenase 2. As I said, cyclooxygenase 1 responsible for inflammation, while 2 for inflammation, while cyclooxygenase 2 for platelet aggregation or clotings. Regarding the side effect associated with the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory، حقيقة هاي المفروض أنت تعرفها حتى بدون قراءة. يعني واحد دا ياخذ take non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs for fractures، واحد صار عنده كسر ودا ينطوه بروفين طو أسبرين اندوميثاسين، ايش تتوقع شو يصير عنده؟ The side effect associated with the use of non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs like aspirin, indomethacin, ibuprofen, etc. will cause, all of them cause gastrointestinal ulcer and renal disturbances. Cause gastrointestinal ulcers and renal disturbances. So they are due to inhibition of what cyclooxygenase? Both of isoform of cyclooxygenase will inhibited by these drugs. وأنا مخلي لكم إياها بالريد لاينز. أنا متفهمون إذا أحكي. On the other hand, aspirin inhibits by irreversible acetylation. يعني بيسوي inhibition irreversible. الأسبرين خلاص ما مو reversible irreversible, whereas indomethacin or ibuprofen inhibit reversibly by competing with the substrate. متفرق الأسبرين from the other non-steroidal anti-inflammatory drugs cause irreversible شنو acetylation. So you have to know, since the cyclooxygenase isoform 2 is expressed in an inflammatory condition, selective non-steroidal anti-inflammatory that inhibit only cyclooxygenase 2 are free from the side effect. يعني شنو what I mean by this? I mean drugs like aspirin, indomethacin, ibuprofen will inhibit both of isoform of cyclooxygenase. For that reason will cause these side effects اللي هو gastrointestinal ulcers and شنو and renal disturbances. While if we create or synthesize a specific drugs that inhibit only cyclooxygenase 2, so this will cause no side effect. So we have at least two selective cyclooxygenase 2 inhibitor اللي هي موجودة in the market at present time اللي هو nimesulide and silicoxib. Both of them I will ask you in exam. nimesulide and silicoxib. وحقيقة اكو حتى في the new generation هسه ما مطلوب عندكم. You have to know the nimesulide and silicoxib. Both of them are highly or selective for cyclooxygenase 2. So for that reason they are devoid from the gastrointestinal and renal side effects. حقيقة دراسات advanced research لقوا بالالزهايمر disease patient with الزهايمر لقيتهم خرف and patients with rectal cancers cyclooxygenase 2 isoform expression is to another subject اللي هو lipid peroxidations. What I mean by lipid peroxidation, عندنا ليبيد بالسيل ممبرين من يصير عندنا دي يعني فد modification or derangement نخرب شغل الليبيد connection مع الليبيد with a protein. This is called lipid peroxidation. As easy as simple, as easy as that. First of all, الاتموسpheric oxygen الeffect مالته on our fat result in the formation of peroxide, one of the free radicals. The lipid peroxidation is chain reactions, not in single or two-step reactions. You have to know the free radical initiate the lipid peroxidation chain reaction. So when I said the free radicals initiate the lipid peroxidation chain reaction, you have to know what I mean by free radicals. As a definition, free radicals can be defined as molecules having unpaired electrons in the outer orbitals and they are highly reactive. شو نقصد بيه؟ هي أي ذرة عندها single electron مو بير مو زوج بال the outer orbitals. تعرفون شنو يعني I mean by outer orbitals. هاي الحقيقة المجرة الشمسية مالتنا كلها الكواكب بيجدة تروح غير كلها لها orbital خاص بيها تفتر بيه. So they are highly reactive. They all كل الفري radicals they all contain oxygen. لذلك نسميهم reactive highly reactive oxygen species. In the biological system, free radicals are generated by the following mechanism. What are the mechanisms by which the free radicals are generated? This is an important question. First of all, your answer will be oxygen radicals. What I mean by oxygen radical? Oxygen radicals are involved in lipid peroxidation. The hydrogen of methylene اللي هي CH2 group of boval poly unsaturated fatty acid is susceptible to extraction. مهيئ الواحد ياخذ من عندها الهيدروجين due to the adjacent double bond لأن أكو بصفة double bond. Hence, in the presence of oxygen free radicals of bova is generated by extracting a methylene hydrogen from membrane bova. So the reaction of bova free radicals with oxygen form peroxybova. peroxy polyunsaturated fatty acid radical, which in turn react with another molecule of PUVA to form PUVA free radicals and endoperoxide. كل هذا الحكي حقيقة for observation. You have to know the mechanism by which, when I say oxygen radicals, by which mechanism, this is in a blue color, is requested from you. You have to know. While the black color is for explanation. You have to know anything about the formation of these oxygen radicals. So ultimately, malonyl dihydroaldehyde اللي هو MDA, which is one of the most important and commonly used indicator of presence of free radical or lipid peroxidations in so many diseases, uses researchers used usually estimated and assessed by which by the estimation of MDA we can appreciate or assess the extent of lipid peroxidation in that specific disease. For example, diabetes mellitus. واحد عنده سكري وأريد أشوف إيش قد عنده lipid peroxidation. أسوي له تيست اللي هو MDA test by which we can estimate and assess the extent of lipid peroxidation. The second mechanism of lipid peroxidations by superoxide. Superoxide لازم تعرفون طلاب هو as such هو مو free radical و cannot هو free radical but cannot initiate the lipid peroxidation. As such the superoxide اللي هو one of the well-known free radical cannot initiate lipid peroxidation. In turn, it generates reactive oxygen species or free radical like singlet oxygen and hydroxy radical OH, and both of these single oxygen and hydroxy radical can initiate lipid peroxidation. As such cannot, but as the superoxide can form singlet oxygen and hydroxy radical, so both of these next two free radical can initiate the lipid peroxidation. This figure explains by which mechanism the free radical can be formed and by which mechanism the lipid peroxidation can be accomplished and achieved. As you see, the PUVA initiation, extraction of hydrogen, as we said, from the methylene group. So the free radical of PUVA by atmospheric or molecular oxygen will form peroxy radical of PUVA, and by propagation by addition of another PUVA and the free radicals will form endoperoxide اللي هو الهيدروperoxide of PUVA, and termination by formation of MDA اللي هو malonyl dialdehyde, which is the most and famous important test for the assessment and testing the lipid peroxidation in our body, used in several diseases like osteoarthritis, rheumatoid arthritis, and diabetes mellitus, and etc. So many diseases. Apart from the above two systems اللي حكيناهم اللي هو الأكسجين radicals and superoxide, of course the light and metals can generate free radical, which in turn can initiate lipid peroxidations. Light and metals. طبعا الميتals of course not all of the metals, specific type of the metals. أنا حقيقة ما حكيتها ولا ذكرتها هنا. I want from you only know this information. Regarding the medical importance of the free radicals and lipid peroxidations. As you know, the membrane lipids, particularly polyunsaturated fatty acid, are in contact with the oxygen, as we said before a few minutes, and metal-rich environment. So they are susceptible to lipid peroxidation, which in turn can cause membrane dysfunction. ومنستر lipid peroxidation بالممbrane, of course, this will derangement will cause derangement in the cell membrane, and any derangement in the cell membrane, this will affect the ion flux and influx and so many metabolic process inside or intercellular processes. The second one, lipid peroxidation, is associated with several diseases or conditions like aging, as I said before, diabetes mellitus, cancer, necrosis, epilepsy, inflammatory and autoimmune disorder, and cardiovascular disease like atherosclerosis. Third, this is an important subject called free radical scavenger systems. Free radical scavenger system, normally, our body can generate free radicals. And in the same time, we have scavenger system to remove these free radicals. So, since free radicals initiate lipid peroxidation, body devised ways to remove free radicals. We have two mechanisms by which our body remove or deal with or manage the free radicals that's generated during normal metabolic processes in our body. We have enzymatic free radical scavenger system and non-enzymatic free radical scavenger systems. Of course, the enzymatic one consists of antioxidant enzymes. اللي هو well known and best example was superoxide dismutase enzyme and glutathione S transferase and catalase enzyme peroxidase and glutathione peroxidase enzyme. All of these fifth or sixth enzyme involve an enzymatic free radical scavenger system and will get rid the free radical from our body because this will initiate the lipid peroxidation and this is will provide a danger and make troubles in normal metabolic pathway in our body. Regarding non-enzymatic free radical scavenger system, it consists of several compounds which act as antioxidant. Most of them are naturally occurring. من أقول non-enzymatic أول ما يتبادر هنا of course vitamin C and vitamin E. They are طبعا include glutathione and melatonin and tocopherol اللي هو vitamin and ascorbic acid vitamin C and lipoic acid and uric acid, carotenes, caffeine and bilirubin. All of these included in non-enzymatic free radicals. Of course, these non-enzymatic free radicals can be synthesized by our body or can be getting from the outside from our daily diet. That's all about this lectures. I'll give you 15 minutes and again I will give you another lecture completion. Why? Because there is a lot of lectures regarding lipid metabolism should be covered by me. Please اخذوا 30 دقيقة أو 20 دقيقة. هواي 30 دقيقة. لو تريدون أكمل طلاب anyone
دكتور يعني تاخذ محاضرة جديدة؟
يسمونها ميتابوليك سيندروم. قبل ما أشفت لكم المحاضرة الأخيرة اللي هي على اللايبوبروتين ديزيز اللي هي ديسليبيديمياز الهايبر لايبوبروتينيمياز اللي هي ديسليبيديمياز including both hyperlipidemias and hypolipidemias. ومحاضرة مختصرة طبعا هي بس الديسليبيديميا 4 محاضرات طلاب مو محاضرة راح سويت لكم اياها محاضرة واحدة.
تمام دكتور ابدي بيها لأن أنا هسه قاعد أسجلها.
لا طول المجال حل على مود ادز لكم هاي مالت الحضور ما سويت لكم مال استمارة حضور وابلش وياكم. اوكي
تمام دكتور
ماشي.